Okay, we're ready to go. And welcome to the November 4th, 2019 regular City Council meeting. And would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran. Here. Councilmember Gonzalez. Absent. Councilmember Hamrick.
Here.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Here.
Councilmember Meisner.
Here.
Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Here.
Mayor Troutman.
Here. Okay, we're going to have an invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise? Craig Swearigan, would you come forward?
I'd like to start with a quote from George Washington. It says, "It's impossible to govern the world without God. It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly implore His protection and favor." So, Lord, I do ask that you would help the City Council govern the city with wisdom and discernment. We also ask for your protection and favor. We're just so grateful to live in this beautiful city, and so we thank you. We thank you also for the firemen and the policemen who risk their lives to protect us. We say all this in your name. Amen.
Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Greg Swearigan is with the Royal Gorge Vineyard Church, so thank you again, Greg. Great. All right. In the beginning of the meeting, if you have a subject you would like to talk to City Council about, we have some sheets back there we'd like you to fill out and give it to Cindy, our clerk. If it's something that's on the agenda, then we would wait until that agenda item comes up, and then we'll have you come forward and talk while we're discussing the item on the agenda. So if anybody here would like to address City Council on any particular issue at all, please feel free to come forward, fill out a sheet so we know who you are, and bring it to Cindy, and we'll go forward. Well, that wasn't real popular, was it? So, okay. Any council member announcements? Hurry up, I'm dying here. Somebody say something. So, okay.
Go vote.
Go ahead, Mr. Meisner.
Go vote. And not necessarily for me, just go vote.
Wow. Ms. Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to give a reminder that we do have the open house for the U.S. Highway 50. It's like a pedestrian crossing study or plans for safe pedestrian crossings between 1st and 15th Streets. And is it 1st and 15th or 1st and 9th?
Yeah, it's the access control plan from
Okay.
first to 15th. They're actually before first.
So a lot of it will be covering the access control, and that's with the getting in and out of businesses along Highway 50 between those two marks. So highway tomorrow or Wednesday, 6 o'clock.
Looks like right here,
Oh, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Do I hear 4? Okay, no, 5. 5 o'clock.
Open house from 5 to 7.
5 to 7, open house. And
And that'll be, so we won't have general government. It is going to be the open house.
good. Okay, anybody else? Then I have a few. We have our community relations meeting on here Thursday at 4 o'clock. That is a meeting between the people at the federal prison, the state prison, and our officers and other people. Hopefully we'll have somebody from here from one of the commissioners here as well. That's right here. We have our meeting, or our KRLN, our radio program, at 8:30 on Wednesday morning. Who would like to go to that? Don't speak up all at once.
I have a doctor's appointment.
Okay, would you rather go to the radio or your doctor's appointment? Okay, just kidding. All right, I'll be there. And then I'd like to just shout out to our Canyon City Band is in the top 5 for the state, and Florence Band is #1 in their class in the state, and they're in Grand Junction right now. According to my wife, very cold, but they go on at 7 o'clock this evening for their final performance. The top 5 bands will go off at 7 o'clock, and Canyon City was selected first to do their number. And if you've not seen our band, they're extraordinarily impressive. And having been somewhat of a football player in high school who laughed at the band, I don't anymore. My son and grandson is it, and believe me, I'm the guy that can't chew gum and walk. Those people play, and it's amazing how hard that is. But I'd like to shout out to them. And then, I have a little letter here. The Colorado Association of School Boards named the Canyon City School District Board of Education the 2019 All-State Board. The CASB All-State Award recognizes boards of education in Colorado for overall excellence in governance. Some of the past recipients have been Aurora, Littleton, Mapleton, Custer County, St. Vrain, Center, Mesa County, and Westminster. The selection process asks for evidence of how a board advanced student success, demonstrated leadership, used sound reasoning, and strong ethics in its decision-making, continuously developed its members individually and as a team, and displayed excellence and consistency in responding to challenges or issues the board and community faced. I wish to thank and congratulate the board members Larry Otto, Lloyd Harwood, Mary Kay Evans, Chad Johnson, and Robin Reesner on receiving this award. It's quite a high honor for our board to be honored in that fashion, and as well as all the staff and all the educators there, and Mr. Welsh as well. So we have a really great school system in our town, and if you've not had an opportunity to sit in any of their classes like I have, I am so glad we have people who want to do that. That is a grueling job. Thank you again. Anything else? Council? All right, then. I would like to, I have a proclamation in recognition of National American Indian Heritage Month, which is November of this month. I've signed the following proclamation. Whereas the history and culture of our great nation has been significantly influenced by American Indians and indigenous peoples, and whereas the contributions of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas 94% of consumers in the United States value the contributions small business make in their community, and whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States. Whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976 and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President George Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as numerous cultural, artistic, and educational historical activities have been planned. Therefore, I, Preston Troutman, Mayor of Canyon City, Colorado, do have the distinct honor of proclaiming November 2019 as National American Heritage Month. And I have signed that proclamation, and we'll get that out. So, okay. The next on the agenda is the Public Arts Mural Program and Volunteer Recognition. Is Ms. Becker here? Invite Glenda to come forward. There she is. If you've not had the opportunity to go by our Centennial Park and that area down there to see these wonderful murals, please do so. They are just gorgeous, and we're so thankful that you had people that would do that, and I don't want to steal your thunder, so go right ahead, Glenna.
So I
Glenda.
just,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
sorry. I was part of the committee, so I just wanted to thank a few people first, and then we'll have you read off the names of the volunteers, and we have certificates and pins for all the volunteers
Great.
who help paint. First of all, our committee, Amanda Cochran was on it, Jesse Young from Parks, myself and Meg Olson, who's running a little late from Mountain View Core Knowledge School. Thank you all for all the hours and input you had on this and helping us get this first mural project done. All the students that put in art for the art show and for the murals to be chosen. So we completely enjoyed that and the art show, and we had a lot of wonderful designs. So, and then to the volunteers, just so everybody knows, we had over 70 adults and children help paint, transfer the outlines of the murals to the project site and actually help paint. And cumulatively, they spent over 250 hours during June and into July. So thank you all. Without everybody pitching in and supporting this, we wouldn't have these beautiful murals at the 4th Street Viaduct. We will be starting on the next project for next year, which will be one or both of the walls, we haven't decided yet, at the concrete drainage channel on the west side of Centennial Park. So make sure you watch for announcements on that, and hopefully you'll all be up for being involved in that also. So we won't take up much more time. We'll let the mayor read off names. If you're here, please come forward. I've got, like I said, a certificate and a pin for you. And then we're going to try to impose on Carrie to take a group picture.
That's the easy part. Now, I'm going to read all these names off, and please, if I mispronounce them, forgive me, but, okay. Sarah Alarich, Yasmin Almanza, Abigail Anderson. If I read your name and you're here, just come on out. Sarah Blair, Dax Bruder, Xavier Chavez, Elizabeth Cornella, Tanner Cornella, Joseph Cruz, Christy Cushman, Chole Dickens, Carolyn Dominguez, Maya Dominguez, Abby Donnelly, Zane Donnelly, Halia Fretwell, Mackenzie Gardner, Kyle Goror, Ellie Grooms, Emerald Hansen, Rhapsody Hansen, Aaliyah Hatfield, Ben Hatfield, Kali E. Lambert, Stephen Mann, Joe Mariner, Aaron Mathis, Jerry Mead, Elijah Medina, Ilana Medina, Frank Miller, Kinley Norden, Marcus Norden, Kayleen Ontiveros, Sophia Ontiveros, Julia Persall, Sophia Persale, Sky Pierce, Wyatt Pierce, Eliana Prock, Marizidi Prock, Emily Rabinowitz, Allison Reddick, Christy Reddick, Xavier Schramm, Darlene Sinise, Jorge Sinise, Deanna Swetlick, Dina Swetlick? Sorry, that caught me. Olive Thorson, Larry Trimble, Deanna Walsh, R.J. Walsh, Alexander Weatherall, Carly Weatherall, Darcy Wiggy, Pat Wiles, Quinn Witkowski, Reese Witkowski, Lynette Wolf, Molly Woolhard, Riley Wright, Mackenzie Zink, Bentley, Caden, Scott, Anto, Lexi, with no last name, so we're going to give them last names. Or are those pets? No? Is that what you got? Okay. Third Dimension Signs, BB's, Sam Crawford Family, True Value, Home Depot, Dungeons Incorporated, and Henry's Custom Paint. That is what I have. If I missed anybody, come on out and join us here. We're going to take a group picture. This is really great. Again, I can't emphasize how wonderful it is to have that 4th Street Viaduct painted, and all these people, all the hours it took to do it, the planning, and again, we thank the people. Anybody else? All right. We're still filtering through here. So, yeah, we need to probably move this way, and we'll stand behind you here. I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable. That's a joke. All right. Yes. Do we miss somebody? If you didn't get a certificate, please see Glenn in the back. We'll get taken care of that. Okay. I would then ask the city acting administrator to review the agenda and the consent agenda items.
Mayor and members of council, item 8A is the approval of minutes for the special city council meeting on October 17th and October 23rd. 8B is change in title and job descriptions for the senior accounting technician to utility billing technician 1. 8C is change in title and job description for senior accounting technician to utility billing technician 2. 8D awards bid 5419 wayfinding signs, vehicular and pedestrian to Hilton Displays of Greenville, South Carolina in an amount not to exceed $308,731.08. 8E ratify the purchase of construction material for Centennial Park shelters. 8F, authorize the acting city administrator to sign a contract with Paylocity at a cost of $16.50 per employee per month, with a $4,031.84 setup fee and year-end fees of $650 per employee. 8G, authorize the acting city administrator to sign a parking lot lease agreement on Royal Gorge Boulevard in the amount of $2,181.76 per lot. And 8H is to receive and file a list of bills.
Are there any additions or corrections? Mr. Meisner?
Did you get my email?
I had a couple of emails from you.
Okay.
I responded to the one regarding the HRIS system, which, you had a question about bid versus RFP for that one. In the purchasing policy under professional services, we do not have to go out to RFP. We did go out for several quotes from several different companies. There were many different companies. They didn't provide an apples to apples offerings, or they had third-party integrations that were going to make the prices go up. So we went with Paylocity in this instance. I believe you had.
So is that a $30,000 annual expense then?
It is, yes, sir.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
So I'm still confused about the park pavilions or whatever we're constructing. And
Okay.
I had a number of questions about that.
And there was a response to that as well from Rex directly. Because of some of the council concerns about the cost of what was being spent at Centennial Park, we reworked the park pavilions, and and we're going to be doing that work ourselves. It will require a building permit from the building department, and we are using the construction plans that were provided by the engineered drawings of the pavilions by the pavilion company.
And where do we come about with the expertise to build these?
We're using existing staff and following the directions or building plans that they have.
I mean, the one concern I have is, don't we have $100,000 in leftover revenue from Centennial Park?
We have $100,000, yes, that we're planning on rolling over to next year.
So I'm not sure I understand council's concerns about the budget with Centennial Park when we're 100,000 savings. Something doesn't make sense to me there.
Well, we were asked for that special city council meeting in September, and because of that, we did what we could to try and find additional savings, and that was what we were directed at the time.
Yeah, but at that time, that 100,000 was going to get used at Macon Plaza, and is still planned for Macon Plaza.
Well, at the time, we were going to be using that money for some of these improvements, including hiring a company to build these pavilions. We have 100,000 because we made some savings adjustments there, and then based off of the city council meeting that we had regarding Title 16. It's something I was going to address in my administrator report. From the members who attended that meeting, the discussion was to roll that 100,000 that was put aside for Macon Plaza into redoing Title 17 and 16.
On item B and C, I mean, as I'm understanding it, we're essentially changing the job descriptions. In reality, what is that going to accomplish besides somebody's job title changing?
So for the financial technician roles, we're kind of going through this process where everybody was under the exact same job title, even though they had different job functions within finance. We're trying to make job descriptions that actually match what people are doing. So when we go out and advertise for openings, people who are applying for the jobs have a better understanding of what work they'll actually be doing when they apply for those jobs.
Okay, Ms. Cochran.
To kind of piggyback off Jim's concerns, is it possible to know how long those pavilions will take our Parks Department to build and multiply, hours times salary times?
I don't have those numbers right now. Jesse's here. He might be able to answer that question.
Jesse, would you step to the microphone, please?
I don't know how these things work, but I don't want to get too close.
They're called microphones. Just
So
talk away.
we put the pavilions out to bid, and Rex knows more of an answer because he deals with Ryan and council and Mr. Troutman and everyone else. The local contractors here in the city of Canyon City are completely booked out. It's really hard to find contractors right now that are available. And the price for a contractor right now to do the work in which we are speaking about is a lot higher than the cost of the materials in which we bought. The $30,000 in materials that we bought is the materials. We would probably be looking at 3 to, and this is a educated guess, 3 to 4 times minimum for that cost to have contractors build it. I've built houses for many contractors here, and I've built a lot of stuff. Rex knows that I can build stuff.
About how long do you think it would take you guys to put
For
those
me,
up?
we have the concrete in already. Our concrete contractors did the pads, 2 out of 3. We need 1 more to put in. The sonotubes per Jessic Engineering out of Denver are already installed. The materials have been ordered, and I believe that we are probably within 30 days of having them in our possession. To build those structures, I would think that 1 structure would take 2 to 4 guys, 3 days. 3 days. They're not overly complicated, and that's why we chose to do them ourselves. Rex approached me and said this was the price that we got from a contractor, and I believe it was about $30,000 a shelter, if not greater. And I'll double check with Rex on that. I'm here for the Public Arts Award. I should not be speaking without having exact numbers for council. But as I told Adam, when questions of this arise, then I should say something. We are building these shelters permitted, inspected, for pennies on the dollar. We did not have the money in the budget to build them through a contractor. When we approached contractors, which we did, they told us, no, we are way too busy and way too far booked out.
Councilwoman Cochran, I can get you some numbers on what we expect it's going to take from a time standpoint.
So,
And then I had a second question on the lease for the parking lots. It's a 3-year lease we're talking about doing?
It's up to a 3-year lease, yes.
Okay. I personally would feel more comfortable doing a 1-year lease to start and seeing if it's even utilized. Because my opinion is that it's probably going to be utilized by tenants of the apartments. And at that point, I don't know that it's generating any revenue for the city. Because I would love to see that used by people who are out shopping or dining. And I don't know that that's what it's going to be used for. So I'd be curious to see if maybe we could do a 1-year lease and see what kind of impact that has on
Sure.
businesses.
Part of the reason that we've been looking for off-street parking is actually for the tenants and the businesses, so that their employees and tenants can be parking off-street, so it leaves on-street parking available for the customers.
And if that's the case, then I would lean towards doing permit parking in that parking lot.
Okay. Ms. Jaquez?
In the same line there. I just can't see us spending more money for parking spaces, whether it's for tenants to live there, this and that and everything. We are not utilizing the 2 spots that we had previously purchased, in a sense, for that purpose. We haven't done anything with the Dorito property where the clock tower is. No striping, no nothing. So we don't even know how many total spaces we're going to get on that property. I understand there could be a difficulty with the Constantino spot. But I just cannot see us spending any more money for parking spaces, all right? And I kind of go along with what Ms. Cochran is saying. If we're going to do that for the tenants that live in the area and all that, let's do by permit for those folks so that they get there, so we know who is going to utilize those spots and that. But I'm actually just against any more property for parking, okay? Because we are not utilizing the spots that we have spent close to $500,000 on. And now we're going to spend some more money. And that's my feeling.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith?
I just want to confirm that Constantino's is not practical for parking downtown. This is my turn to talk. And
That was one of
Doritos-
the selling points,
Yeah.
actually. Okay,
Well,
that
for
was one of the
RV
selling
parking,
points.
for
Okay.
RV
Well, no, that was-
parking. It does have parking, and that was more to accommodate Veterans Park, not downtown. And so that parking was to help alleviate some of the problems at Veterans Park and to provide RV parking, because there is no RV parking in Canyon City. Doritos is being used. I see cars there every day. We have meetings with the downtown merchants, and we say, what can we do to support downtown? How can we better support you? What do you need? Every time it comes back, we absolutely need more parking. And their hugest frustration are the residents who are living there or employees who are taking the prime spots for their shoppers. And so I do support a year lease might be better just to see how it goes. And I'm okay with exploring also with some permitting, especially for overnight parking, to have that premium space. But I do feel like it's important if we go to the merchants and say, what can we do to support, to help revitalize downtown, and they give us their number one need, that we do need to listen to them.
So what I'm hearing is a lease agreement with 1 year with maybe one-year options afterwards?
Hang on.
Yeah, I think several of us probably have some
Ms.
comments.
Turner? Ms. Turner?
Well, as for the parking, I'm looking at the language in the lease agreement. And under use, it says that the parking lots shall be used for the general public. So I wonder under that language, if we can do permitting. And I don't know, that's probably a question for Catherine, but it seems to draw a distinction between city employees and everyone else. But it's not clear whether we'd be allowed to permit that lot for specific types of users.
I guess I would suggest if you do want to do that, or you want to leave that option open, that we do revise that language to be
Yeah.
more specific and give us that right.
Okay.
Mr. Meisner?
Well, personally, I was not under the impression that we acquired Constantinos for parking. We even had a meeting here to discuss moving forward with options to sell that property or to get RFPs or whatever it's called to market that property. That is not a parking spot as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not necessarily enthused about the location of where it's at, but if that's what we've got, then I kind of go along with Ms. Cochran and Ms. Smith's suggestion of, let's do a year. At that particular location, it would be nice if we could get some tenants and employees to move over there and freeing up some spaces on Main Street. I don't know exactly how you formulate that whole thing to make that work, but I don't know. I just don't know how well it's going to work to have people parking, even though it's on the highway, and then moving over to Main Street, which is the objective of what we're trying to do. I don't know how much benefit that's going to have to the Main Street people if we don't get tenants and employees off of Main Street.
Okay, Mr. Hamrick?
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that this is, in my non-legal parlance, this is an up to lease. It can be up to 2022, but the actual lease language says either party may terminate this lease upon 30 days written notice. So we can try it for 30 days even, and if we don't like it, we can say, hey, let's do something else. So we have that. This is an up to lease. We have up to 2 years to use it, but either party can terminate with 30 days written notice. And so it's not with or without cause. So that means for any reason, we can say, oh, we're done, and that should
I just
allow us.
would worry that if we don't set an end time, it would just kind of continue going until somebody said, oh, wait a minute, what about that lease? You know?
Where have you ever seen that happen?
That usually happens a decade later.
Yeah.
Then perhaps what we should ask for is a quarterly report or something like that from our city administrator, acting city administrator, to keep us updated on what usage looks like there.
Yeah, something. I mean,
And we do have permits, so if we change the lease agreement to allow permits and property owners okay with that, then.
Because currently you can't park overnight on Main Street, correct? Or you can?
No, you cannot.
You cannot.
Right,
So-
for street sweeping and snow
Okay.
removal.
Ms. Turner?
Well, I actually have questions on a different topic, so I want,
Okay.
if people still
Here-
have comments about the parking. let's-
I would have you consider, maybe, we have lots of loose ends out here on G. We'd pull it off the consent agenda for later consideration, and then we would direct staff to come up with a permitting idea or a one-year lease or something to satisfy all these questions that I hear. So when you make your motion, if you want to consider that and then have it come back later, is that a suggestion you could live with?
Well, I think we can amend it tonight.
How do you, okay. All right. Okay.
Catherine, can we amend that during the motion for the consent agenda, or do we need to move it to a
I
regular?
would pull it off the consent agenda and then you could just move it to a separate item on the agenda and discuss the amendments in more detail.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
or
Turner?
we could actually bring it to government meeting.
Ms. Turner?
So I wanted to go back to items B and C. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what's happening here, because the memo wasn't so clear to me. So we're just changing the job title and then matching the description to what these folks are actually doing day to day?
Correct.
Okay.
So within finance, everybody previously, under the previous finance director, they all had the exact same job title, even though they were doing different functions within finance.
Okay, so this won't mean any type of pay change for those people?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's one sentence in here that I didn't understand. It says, "The job description has not been reviewed by the employee since a 2-week notice was given on October 24th, 2019. What does that mean?
We have one employee where the job description is changing, and today was his last day. So, he is not reviewed
Oh.
because he has left the organization.
Okay. I was so confused. Okay, that makes more sense. So we didn't review that person's description because they were leaving?
Right. We didn't sit down with them and talk about the job description because they were already leaving.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ms. Smith?
Ryan, I would like to know for the signs, our gateway and pedestrian wayfinding signs and such, what kind of revisions were made to those signs to make it more affordable and within our budget?
Actually, I'll ask Adam to come up and talk about some of those cost-saving measures.
Sure. So obviously, the biggest change was the scope. We trimmed out some of the signs that we were going to put in, but we were able to get about $10,000 worth of savings from the contractor in changing the design that was done by Tangram, the original designer of the signs. They had some installation details that were way far above and beyond what is required by the city and CDOT. And so we had them scale back some of those installations, but more specifically to the type of posts that were used and the type of anchorage in the posts.
On the picture descriptions, I see one of the gateway monument signs, but not the west one. Is the west one being done or not?
So those aren't gateway signs. The ones that you see there are the smaller
Oh,
district signs. Yeah.
okay.
So the gateway signs are a different contract, and those are being built right now.
Okay.
Yep.
What are some of the signs, can you give examples that are being taken down? Like, we have some old Welcome to Canyon City signs that are pretty dated. Are those coming down?
So the two special signs that are still in the bid to be taken out are there's the stone brick sign that's in Veterans Park that says, "Welcome to our home." And then there's the sign that was built by the Rotary Club years and years ago next to Poppy Murphy's that has a bridge sculpture on it. It says Canyon City on it. It has a brick background. Those two signs are being removed. And then there's a bunch of smaller signs, some of the old brown or green signs that are being replaced with new signs.
When do you think these will be, or new ones be in place?
Probably not till after the first of the year. It'll probably take them a good couple months, especially this time of year, to get things constructed.
Do you think we'll still have a quality product even though we had to cut back on some of the standards?
Oh, absolutely. So nothing has changed as far as the quality. Really just the installation standards, basically, and how the posts are installed in the ground and so forth. But as far as the sign faces themselves and everything is all exactly identical to what we bid.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Adam. Any other questions? Okay. I'm at a point where I'd like to ask for a motion, keeping in your mind what you would like to do with G.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda and the consent agenda with moving item G to, I'm going to say like 10A.
You may if you like.
Would you mind not, because those are public hearings, so maybe if
Okay.
we
Yeah.
move it to the discussion section, 14A,
okay.
maybe, is that okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Can
We
I make
could-
a recommendation? Would you mind moving item G to a government meeting?
I don't think it needs that much discussion.
We can't find a solution tonight. Okay.
Does she need to rework wording on stuff? Does that
We were
require-
just going to, I was just going to amend that we amend it to allow the option for permit parking. I wasn't sure if there was anything else that needed to be
But
added.
that'll be for when we get to that item.
Yeah.
So second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Does everybody understand that motion? Okay. Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Nay.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay, let's move then G to prior to the administrator's report and have a discussion on that. Is that what your intent was?
I thought we were moving it after.
before 14.
Before 14? All right, yeah. I think we don't want to delay anymore. Patrick's been here long enough. Huh? Okay. Then we'll move that to, well, those are, we have to move it then to the after 14. Because that's also a hearing. That's a hearing as well.
Catherine said 14A.
14A. That's what I was about to say as well. All right, MVG. All right, let's do that. Okay, do we have a report from the acting city administrator?
Yes, sir. I'd first like to, thank the city crews for the work they did during the snowstorm. They were out early and stayed out late, making sure that the roads were cleared. And I know that our roads looked really good, especially compared to some of the CDOT roads and county roads. I didn't have any complaints from any community members, and I know they did a really good job trying to make sure that Main Street was clear as well. In lieu of our November 20th Vision Committee meeting, the Office of Economic Development is going to be in town, touring the area. They're hosting their monthly meeting here in Fremont County. They don't do off-site visits outside of Denver very often, so this is a great opportunity to meet state economic development leaders. Council will be receiving an invitation to that dinner if you've not received it already. We are currently working on rewriting the employee handbook. The last time it was rewritten was in 2008, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to update that. As I mentioned earlier, the Vision Committee meeting on Tuesday, October 22nd, we discussed Title 16 and annexation procedures. During that meeting, the council members who were present, were asked staff if we could rewrite Titles 16 and 17. And because we did not have a full quorum there, wanted to bring that back to City Council and make sure that we have a thumbs up for going through that process. And that's our subdivision regulations, zoning regulations, with an idea of trying to make the process easier and more business friendly. It was suggested during that meeting that we take the money that we have set aside for Macon Plaza, or that $100,000, in order to have the professional services that we need to make the rewrite happen and streamline those processes. So at this point, I'd like to at least know that I have council support to move forward with that initiative.
Okay, then we should go with a comment starting from Ms. Turner, and let's go this way and see if we're in favor of that.
I wasn't at that meeting, but I guess I don't know if I understand the logic in taking money that we had committed for Macon Plaza and putting it towards title rewrites.
Well, the money has not been approved. It's part of the 2020 budget, so it's money that could be allocated in other places based on the direction of City Council.
So have we determined that it's going to cost us $100,000 to rewrite those titles?
No, we have not, and nor would we spend that much if we didn't have to.
Mayor,
Ms. Turner's talking.
I could help her.
Okay.
So, we went through this discussion of, what is it, 16 and 17? About how we're going to change it and how antiquated it is. And council said, why don't we just throw it away, go out to some fancy city that's successful, look at what they have and bring it here, and do some minor adoption to that and adopt it, instead of trying to rewrite 16 and 17. And that's kind of where we came. And then I'll make this statement, but I don't support it. The statement is that it's going to take 2 years for this to get done, which boggles my mind. But anyways, and I said, and maybe somebody else did, that we got 100,000 that we keep playing with from Centennial Park and Rudd Park. Take that 100,000 and put it to good use and do something that's going to benefit the community. If he needs more personnel support, take that 100,000 and get him the support that he needs so that he can get a new, not rewritten, a new 16 and 17 accomplished. And I say within a year. 2 years is crazy. And I realize that's a minor opinion, but
Well, sorry, to clarify, it's mine. It's my opinion, and I've done this with several communities, and that's just been my experience. And so I said it could take up to 2 years. Certainly, if it's not going to take that long, we're not going to drag it out, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Meisner, that clarification.
so that's how we got where we're at, kind of.
All right, so the idea really wasn't like, let's spend 100 grand to rewrite 2 titles?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Are you still mind boggled, Mr. Meisner, or would you like to comment?
Oh, no, I just tell you, I'm in full support of throwing away 16 and 17 and getting new 16 and 17s. And if he needs 100,000 to get it done, I support that. But you need to do it in a year, not 2 years. And if you're rewriting it, I understand that. But
Well, and, okay, so I just want to clarify something. So what I want the other council members who weren't here to hear what I said. And I said that 16 could probably be thrown out completely. The problem with 17 is it's connected to your zoning and your zoning map. Now, while you can throw out 17 if you'd like, you might have to create a new map. That takes time. That's one more thing. So 17 probably can't just be thrown out wholeheartedly. That's my kind of cautionary advice, I guess. So.
Thank you, Catherine. Mr. Hamrick.
I'd just like to support what Mr. Meisner was saying, and that if we have a template that we can use, it would be a lot better. Part of the discussion also at that meeting was that the way 16 has evolved has been kind of like Topsy, that there's been several amendments to it, specific problems trying to be addressed that have ended up hashing things up pretty well. And so that was really where we came to on the idea of throwing 16 out and seeing if we can't get something a lot simpler and a lot more business friendly.
Ms. Jaquez.
One of the other things that came up in that discussion with regards to, I know the 2 years was mentioned, but the reason why we went that way that evening was we wanted to give them the opportunity to look and do what they needed to do without having, like we've had in the past, they bring something to us, we discuss it, then we pass it on to another time frame. It's to avoid all those in-between unnecessary meetings that we've had on some of those subjects and that. So that's the purpose for the time frame. Gives them the opportunity, so when they come back, whether it's 1 year, year and a half, whatever the case may be, when they come back to council, they'll be able to come back to council with hopefully what will work with regards to either the combining, getting rid of one or the other, integrating them in there, but it doesn't push them to go ahead and say, we want it done in 2 months. Like we've done stuff like that in the past, where we've given these quick timelines, and then when they come back, we sit and argue about it. So this is one of those things, hopefully, to allow them the opportunity to do their professional job. When they feel they have what needs to come back to us, then they'll do that.
Thank you, Ms. Jaquez. Ms. Smith?
I was not at that meeting, but I definitely support throwing out 16 and starting fresh and new for 17. I think that needs to be our #1 priority for 2020 to accomplish that. Now, just blanketing and saying, let's just give $100,000 for Macon Plaza to do it, I would like to see maybe a little bit more thought to how much it will cost to do it, and looking at the 2020 budget since we haven't adopted it yet and see where we can make that fit whatever that number needs to be. And I want to make sure that we do have, although we are also making it a priority to really get to the basics of government and taking care of the basics, and this is one of them. I also want to be sure that we have money for improvements that we might need for community development, but and it may not be $100,000, but also economic development and incentives that we need. There's some businesses that want to come in, and there's some gaps that need to be filled. I want to make sure that we take care of that. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Cochran?
Some of this sounds familiar, so I don't know if I was here or not, to be honest with you, but so if we eliminate 16, are we just eliminating 16, or are we taking 16 from another?
We're taking 16 and we're going to streamline a better process
Okay.
than what we have today.
Okay. And that would be from a city that's doing it well, in theory?
We're going to be looking at other communities and seeing what works well, and yes.
Okay.
But we need something that's going to fit for Canyon City. It's
Right.
not going to be just a transplant from another code. I think that's kind of how we've gotten into this predicament already.
So I would say that I am definitely in favor of, making 16 and 17 easier for businesses and for development. But again, that $100,000 is a little scary of a number. So if we could sit down and see how much it truly would cost before we just kind of say blanket
Sure, and
$100,000.
a lot of that cost is going to be dependent on how quickly we have to turn something around.
Okay.
Mr. Arquez? Have you said your piece? Did you say your piece? All right, it appears to me that council is behind this movement, and we would like to go forward with it. We have cost concerns, of course, and we trust that you will give us a pretty good idea on basically how close you can get us.
Sure.
Because we dearly want that change. It is not real friendly at this point. Am I getting that somewhat correct? Thank you, we
That's
did.
pretty mild language.
Very mild. All right, thank you so much. Would you like to continue?
Yeah, Mr. Portis came and addressed council at the last meeting. We have reached out to him. We have a meeting with him tomorrow to discuss his concerns. We're hosting an employee health fair tomorrow here at City Hall. And then the annual Christmas tree lighting at Depot Park, that has been confirmed for Thursday, December 5th.
December when?
December 5th,
What time?
6 p.m.
Which go ahead.
The rest of, what I have, the library hosted in Edgar Allan Poe Chautauqua is a very, success. 90 people showed up. And again, the museum hosted the Sand Creek Massacre presentation. They were standing room only. They had to turn people away. It's just a testament of how well our museum and library do with their programming and getting the word out there. And then annual leaf pickup will start on November 12th. And I don't see the memo in here, but I will forward that over to you.
Okay. Just our city clerk. If we all go to the tree lighting, is that a special city council meeting?
Who's looking?
Social gathering.
It's a social gathering. Okay. All right.
Just don't discuss any public business.
Wouldn't even think about it. Absolutely
Talking
not.
to each other.
Right.
We'll be in a Christmas spirit already. So, good, Mr. Hamrick.
I would just like to, so when I worked in industry, one of the things I was responsible for were evergreen documents that companies maintained, like health, safety, and environmental protection procedures. I'd like to point out that it should not be a, once every 10 years undertaking to keep an evergreen manual evergreen. It's something that needs to be worked on every year.
Absolutely agree.
Thank you.
Okay. One question I have had from citizens is 12th Street. And I know from my morning walks it has been that way for a long time. Are we coming close? Adam, would you care to? You're shaking your head. We'd like to hear it because I have gotten many calls on when are we going to get that done? Is it just too cold? Was it that complicated? Or would you comment on that, please?
Not any more complicated than the weather.
Okay.
So we're going to try this week. We'll see what happens with the temperatures.
When you say try, that is the asphalt?
Yes.
Okay. I saw they were working on it today.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
obviously
still
when-
working on concrete, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I really put a torch on that. I didn't mean that. But
A
yeah,
torch
we'd
would work.
like to get that done.
Yep.
And I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep.
What's
Thank
left
you.
on Forge?
Striping, which is supposed to maybe start tomorrow. We'll see. Again, temperature dependent. But other than that, Forge Road is complete.
Awesome.
Okay. Are you finished, Mr. Administrator?
I am done, yes.
Okay. Mr. Meisner?
Item 3, I would just ask that whenever that green book, or whatever John called it, is done, that we brought that to a government meeting and not a city council meeting as suggested there.
We will, yes. Well, yeah.
Mr. Arquez?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right time, but I've had some people ask me, quite a while back, we had a problem. Thanks. With regards to the construction that was done by the hospital with the parking lot and all that stuff, and then we reached out to the folks that did it. They weren't in compliance with stuff like that. They were given a deadline with regards to getting back in touch to see about getting it taken care of. Where do we stand with regards to that situation?
To, yeah, the St. Thomas More.
Yes.
Parking lot that was, yep. Actually, Patrick sent a notification right after that meeting. They started taking down lights and some of the cameras. Patrick, do you have any other information on, as far as they've met that deadline at this point?
They have, I believe they have met that deadline, yes. They had agreed, there was a 60-day provision in the lease agreement that they had with the hospital, and at the end of that 60-day period of time was supposed to have been the end of October. So I believe it has ceased to function as a parking lot, but I will make a trip up there to confirm that.
Okay. Thank you, Frank, for bringing that. Was a question as well, because I walked there too, and I've not seen cars in it.
Well, it's still a parking lot though, right?
No?
Just
Well-
for the residents.
It was never really designed as a parking lot. One of the problems that they have is, although it's a gravel surface, there's no striping for, where parking spaces can be located, so it was never physically built as a parking lot. It could function as overflow for the apartment that's there, but to my knowledge, the existing parking lot for that apartment complex is actually adequate for the units that are there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Then I would like to go on and open a public hearing for number 8. This is a second reading and adoption by title only of ordinance 22, series 2019, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending section 17.24.050 of the Canyon City Municipal Code by the addition of a new subsection 100, permitting the use of the property located at 1215 Main Street, Canyon City, Colorado, as the location for a middle school. Patrick, would you like to take over for that?
Certainly. Council may recall that a public hearing was conducted on this special use review request the night of October 21st. This has to do with the school district wanting to do some improvements to the middle school campus located at 1215 Main Street. And part of the terms of the financing for those improvements were that they were able to demonstrate the school district was in compliance with local zoning statutes and under our code, and within residential districts, any kind of a school from kindergarten all the way up to a college or university, it requires a special use review approval. So this is in fact the ordinance at second reading before you this evening. None of the factors that were presented to you the night of the 21st have changed, and therefore staff's recommendation is the same.
Thank you, Patrick. I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing at this time and call for a motion in a second. Mr. Arquez, go ahead.
Mayor,
Please.
members of council, I make a motion that we approve ordinance at second reading, ordinance number 22, series of 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hammack, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Everything seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Thank you all. And number 9, this is also an open public hearing for number 9. This is a second reading and adoption by title only of ordinance 23, series 2019, entitled, I'm on 11, okay. Ordinance 23, series 2019, entitled an ordinance of the City of Canyon City, amending section 17.08.010C of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning the definition of trade and repair shops. Patrick, would you like to?
Certainly. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this was also an item that went to public hearing the night of the 21st of October before council. This would amend the definition of trade and repair shops as it pertains to its use in commercial districts, particularly the commercial district that forms the heart of our downtown, CB Central Business District. As an economic development measure, this would open it up to more artisanal type uses, for instance, glass blowing, woodworking, that sort of thing. So in conjunction with Mr. Stevens, we've put together this ordinance to modify that definition in the hope that we might be able to potentially fill vacancies of stores along Main Street. Again, this is for second reading for your consideration this evening.
Okay. Are there any questions this time of Patrick? None? Then I would no question. I would entertain a motion in a second.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd
Go
like
ahead.
to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 23, series of 2019 on the first reading.
Second reading, sorry.
Second reading.
Second reading.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Meisner, second that motion. Thank you. Any discussions on that motion? None? Would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Thank you all. And then let's go to number 12, which is your number 10, I think. Introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance 27, series 2019, entitled, an ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Title 17 of the Municipal Code by the addition of a new chapter, 17.18, concerning riverfront zoning. And would you speak to us on that, Patrick?
Actually, that will be Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Stevens, thank you.
All right. So the riverfront zoning was a project that's kicked off with the adoption of the River Corridor Master Plan. Staff began working on the riverfront zoning language itself in May of this year, and we've had 4 different joint work sessions with the Planning Commission, August 7th, September 4th, October 9th, and October 23rd. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval to council with 2 minor amendments, one being the height of the flagpoles for residential, and then the color of chairs for the outdoor cafe. Patrick, if you don't mind moving forward a few slides here, go ahead and keep going. Again. One more, and again. The Riverfront Zone District, there's about 4 miles. Oh, no, that's, sorry. One more, Patrick. Okay. So the reason why, we have a regulating plan, which is the River Corridor Master Plan. We're looking to activate the riverfront itself with reinvestment and having more business and development happening along the river corridor. And then allow for more creative development patterns. We're doing this through the creation of 2 new zone districts, the mixed-use riverfront area and the residential riverfront area. And as you'll note within the code, or within the language itself, we're trying to provide a more user-friendly approach than what we've done in the past. And this is going in as Chapter 18 of Title 17. You'll see that we have a lot more diagrams and tables and things like that. This could be applied between the lands between 1st and 11th Street and generally adjacent to the Arkansas River. Creating the language, that's the tool. We are not changing the map itself. This is something where citizens or property owners can come in and elect to apply this language, this zone district to their property. Next slide. The River Corridor Master Plan was adopted in December of 2017, and it is adjacent to the downtown district. Next slide, please, Patrick. So the mixed-use land use, it's to encourage and promote a variety of uses. They're complementary with Main Street commercial. We're trying to encourage pedestrian traffic along the riverfront and circulate some of that traffic between the river and the downtown district. Land use is anticipated for the following uses: retail, restaurant, and lodging. Secondary uses would be office and residential. Next slide, please. Land use number 2 adopted, that's the residential land use. It's to promote infill residential developments within walking distance to downtown and along the river. That encourages the pedestrian access to the Riverwalk. We're expecting a wide variety of closely knit type of communities. Next slide. Again, want to reiterate that this process was about creating the written regulations, and we are not changing the zoning map. This is something where property owners have to self-select. All right, the organization of the chapter, we've got the general provisions, district and regulations, and the development standards. Those districts and regulations are no different than our current zoning with the use, the lot and building standards, and the development standards. Next slide, please. And then those general provisions are the purpose and intent, applicability, and the definitions. So again, to provide that strong urban presence, maximize the development potential of key sections. We've turned our back on the river for a very long time. This language is to encourage that development and future developments along the river. And it's to allow for some flexibility and creativity with that mixed-use development as well. Go ahead and go on to the next slide, please. There's 5.5 miles abutting the riverfront. This zoning language is going to apply to approximately 1 mile or less than 1 mile of that particular riverfront frontage. Again, that's between 1st and 11th Street. There's nearly 8,000 acres of land within the city limits. The mixed use is going to apply to approximately 50 acres. The riverfront residential will apply to approximately 20 acres. We've created some maps. This is really for the sense of having a framework so you know where this can be applied. We have 2 maps, one showing the commercial framework where the mixed use development can be applied, and then the next map shows where that residential usage could be applied as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Patrick. Again, we'll try to put a lot of diagrams to make this easy and user-friendly as we go to look at rewriting Title 17. We'd like to, use this as a framework for some of that development of Title 17 in the future. But we have lot standards, building placement, and building height. Next slide, Patrick. Again, just some of the different diagrams that we're using to signify what is in the language. We also use tables, which are on the next slide, to illustrate the code and really kind of testing, how the code can be applied.
Can I ask a really quick question on that part? Did we take off modular homes?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm that. Thanks.
All right, at this time, I don't have anything else for the presentation, but be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevens. Any questions of council? Mr. Meisner?
I don't have a question, but I do want to commend staff on this project. I mean, while I don't like all the regulations, I understand it, and I understand what the intent is for that special area, and I think that's something that people need to understand, is that the riverfront applies to a specific area. And again, I commend staff for putting forth the effort to not only get it done, but there's a quality product there. I think that, I'm sure we're going to find some problems, but hopefully it'll be minimal.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I
Well,
say.
the other question we had was about lighting on flagpoles. Did we get that resolved? Remember, up, down, ball lights?
So lights in general or down?
No, just flagpole lighting.
I know, hold on just a second. Lighting in general under the code, including the light on top of the flagpole, is downcast. So we raised the height of the flagpole. That was the discussion that came out of that work session. I believe to 15 feet
15
from
feet.
12.
Okay.
So, but we didn't add any additional language regarding specifically lighting on the flagpole.
So we're still limited with down lighting on a flagpole. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I too would like to echo what Mr. Meisner said. I think that's extremely well done and understandable, even for an old guy like me. So I appreciate that. Okay, any more discussions or questions?
I would just
Ms.
like to add my appreciation as well. And I think, I mean, an incredible amount of work went into this, and it was very professionally and well done. And I think one of the successes of this that I really appreciate is that Patrick and Gina have both been in our community for a little while now. Usually when we do these types of master plans, we hire someone, from out, the big city or whatever to come in, and you have to go through this whole process of, what's your vision, blah, 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 blah. But Gina and Patrick have been in this community. They know it incredibly well. You know what our tolerance levels are. You know what our unique nuances are. And so it was very adaptable to our personal needs here in Canyon City. And I just really appreciate that for all that has gone into that. And while I've been on the campaign trail, I would say that the redevelopment for the river zone has been very well received. The community seems to be really eager to see some excellent restaurants and shopping opportunities along the river. They want excellence, and this gives an opportunity to provide both those higher standards of excellence, of those experiences that we want to create along the river. That's a very special place. But it also allows a lot more flexibility for our developers and businesses, especially because we are out right there by the river in the floodplain. And so in some ways, it has that higher standard, but it also has a lot more flexibility to make development more practical and easy and affordable to do. So a win-win. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Meisner?
We had a discussion maybe in the first meeting about one of the problems now is if I change my property to one of the riverfront zoning options, which has got a whole lot of different types of restrictions, we talked about having some assurances in there that he wasn't going to have to adhere to some of those same things from a standpoint of shielding and what have you. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because now we have these issues with shielding from street views and alley views and what have you. But if I change mine to riverfront, are there any issues relative to what my property looks like from the outside that would also affect him?
So I don't know that we have anything in there regarding, somebody who hasn't changed their property yet. I think, the benefit that we have within the riverfront area is that a lot of these parcels are larger parcels that, within the residential district, it's probably going to be a developer that takes a larger parcel, elects this code, or this language, this zoning language, and is going to develop something that's going to be uniform across that larger parcel. You see the same thing along the north end of the bank as well, where a lot of those commercial properties, they're larger parcels, and they probably already comply with a lot of what's already in the code, or they're going to be electing to move into this zoning language to have more flexibility with their property.
For example, I'm riverfront zoning, and he's not, and he has uplighting, and I have downlighting. So then I come back in and say, his uplighting is affecting my zoning, or not my zoning, but my
property.
My property. Where are we standing there on those kinds of issues where all of a sudden his property gets impacted by my decision? Or he has to shield his property because now I'm riverfront.
Yeah, that wouldn't work that way.
Okay.
He's still subject to whatever regulations he's subject to. So just because you became riverfront residential doesn't mean his lighting changes or anything involving his property changes. Now, you may not like his lighting. That's just going to be too bad until he decides to have downcast lighting. But just because you're riverfront residential doesn't make him have to comply with those regulations.
Because we have some situations now where an industrial site has to take precautions because of residential issues with that industrial site. Is that not correct?
I think you're talking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're talking about that ordinance maybe we did a year and a half ago regarding the kind of fencing and shielding if you buffer a residential property. That's
because those residential people are impacting the industrial properties, and those industrial properties are having to take extra actions because of the residential group.
It's a good question. And the answer is possibly, but I'd want to take a closer look at that language too. There's an issue there because one use is coming, the more restrictive use is coming after the less restrictive use. The industrial use is there first, presumably, in your scenario. And so I guess before I say yes or no, I'd like to take a closer look at that language to see if we dealt with that when we passed that ordinance, or if it's just like if you move your commercial in or industrial into a neighborhood, then you have to shield. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But the answer is possibly. The answer to your question is possibly. So if someone zones riverfront residential and there's an industrial use next to it, it's possible that the regulation we're talking about would come into play. So.
But that title does not necessarily.
But the title itself, but that's not in that title. That's in Title 17 outside of these regulations. So.
Okay. All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm closing the public hearing. I'm going to ask for a motion in a second.
I can't even find it.
Mr. Hamrick?
Mr. Mayor and council, I move that we approve on first reading ordinance number 27, series 2019, entitled an ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Title 17 of the Municipal Code by the addition of a new Chapter 17.18 concerning riverfront zoning.
Second.
Either one. You can have it.
I think I heard Ms. Cochran first. So Ms.
Beat me to
Cochran
it.
has the second. Any discussions on that motion?
Where's the actual ordinance at?
So in your packet, you have one that says like draft, and so that shows the changes from your last work session. And then behind that should be the actual ordinance. It won't have that draft watermark on it.
No, I think that was
No.
the other.
I mean, all I'm seeing is,
Okay,
Here it
well,
is
on
right
the
here.
online packet,
Starts
that's
right
what, sorry, I'm looking at the online packet.
Halfway through.
So if you have one in your, oh, sorry. Oh, see,
So
it is
there's-
there, you
so
can't see
there's-
it.
There's duplicate page numbers. There's two sets, 1
What's the last
through
page? Oh, wait a minute.
41.
as usual, Catherine's right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're now in discussion on that motion. Hearing none.
Page 41.
Are you having a private meeting here? Or what is-
Yeah, well, kind of private.
Okay, well, I'm going to call for a roll here. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
I said aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to number 13, in introduction, and I'm going to open a public hearing on this, by the way. And it's introduction, first reading by title only of Ordinance 28, Series 2019, entitled, An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City, amending Section 17.24.050 of the Canyon City Municipal Code by the addition of a new subsection, 101, permitting the use of the property located at Lot 2, Red Hawk Landing Minor Subdivision, Canyon City, Colorado, as the location for a recreational vehicle park. Would that be Administrator or Patrick?
That would be me.
Go right ahead.
In
then.
point of fact, there are actually two items under this land use request. One is a minor subdivision, the other is Ordinance 28 that would allow the special review use for a recreational vehicle park.
Okay.
The subject property is located at 1725 Mariposa Road, and the property owner is calling this project Red Hawk Landing. It would involve a minor subdivision and, as I said, a special review use associated with one of the three lots proposed to be created with this minor subdivision. Now, the subject property is located on the north side of Mariposa Road between the intersections with Valley Road to the northeast and Wild Rose Drive to the west. It was platted as part of the Dawson Business Park subdivision in 2001, and it retains a C general commercial zoning. The property is approximately 8.2 acres in area and is currently undeveloped and vacant. Although utilities exist within Mariposa Road, the lack of development on site means that none of those utilities have been extended into the property. It slopes to the north. The low spot on the property is near the northwest corner, where the drainage wash crosses this property onto the adjacent Dawson Stables property. Site also offers tremendous views of mesas to the north and west. Regarding the land use request associated with this public hearing, the first involves the minor subdivision request to split the property into three lots. Lot 1, situated at the southeast corner of the property, would be a 1.53 acre parcel that would be dedicated for a future use as a hotel or motel. Lot 2, which is situated at the southwest corner of the property, would comprise approximately 1.58 acres and is intended for use as a recreational vehicle park. This will be examined in further detail momentarily. The largest of the lots would be Lot 3, located to the north of the property. It comprises approximately 5 acres and is planned for both equestrian uses and limited greenhouse agricultural crop production. All three lots will have frontage on Mariposa Road, which meets lot width requirements specified for properties within the C General Commercial District zoning. However, the Red Hawk Landing minor subdivision will have only one shared access to Mariposa via a common access driveway on Lot 3 with a public access and egress easement upon it. Now, to reiterate, this subdivision has been named by the applicant as Red Hawk Landing, and staff finds it to meet the minimum requirements for a minor subdivision in that the property is less than 10 acres in area and proposes to create fewer than 5 lots. No new public roadways are contemplated or necessary in order to serve this subdivision or the lots within Red Hawk Landing. Red Hawk Landing was prepared in accordance with the 7 conditions associated with how a minor subdivision plat should be prepared and the 19 criteria a minor subdivision must contain as specified in section 4.10F of the city's subdivision and development regulations. And all 3 lots being created within the Red Hawk Landing meet minimum lot area and frontage for lots within the C General Commercial District zoning, and development on all 3 lots can reasonably meet setbacks as defined for C-zoned properties. As previously mentioned, the applicant proposes to locate a 12-lot RV park on Lot 2. Within the C General Commercial District, RV parks are considered uses by special review and must be approved following public hearing before Planning Commission and Council. To aid in the evaluation of the characteristics of the use and potential impacts on surrounding properties, the applicant has included a conceptual site plan layout for how the 12 RV spaces would be accommodated, with spaces measuring approximately 37 feet in width by 77 feet in depth. All of these spaces would be served by wet utility hookups for the RVs. Screening for these RVs, particularly from Mariposa Road, is the biggest impact associated with this project that would potentially need mitigation. Fortunately, the applicant has agreed to include landscaping along the Lot 2 frontage to Mariposa as part of a forthcoming site plan to address this. Finally, staff finds that the 3 criteria specified in section 17.24.030 for evaluation of special reviews uses has been met or can be met with reasonable mitigations. Now, some additional notes of information about the Red Hawk Landing subdivision and SRU for an RV park on Lot 2 include the fact that the applicant seeks approval of 2 conditional use permits for this site. One of these would allow for one of the spaces in the RV park on Lot 2 to be used as a watchman's quarters. The second CUP would allow for animals, specifically horse boarding, to take place on Lot 3. Under the city's review and approval procedures for conditional use permits, they are administratively processed against defined criteria, and all neighbors in the immediately adjacent properties are notified by U.S. mail of the application and its details so that neighbors can review the project and advise staff of any concerns they have. To date, neither CUP request has generated any inquiries with city staff. Staff is therefore prepared to issue a CUP approval for both requests, but only at the minor subdivision and the special review use for the RV park are approved. Now with that, Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on both the minor subdivision and special review use requests on October 23rd, 2019. After deliberations and citing findings of fact on the city's jurisdiction to hear and act on the request, Planning Commission forwarded the following recommendations. Staff and the Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the Red Hawk Landing minor subdivision request subject to 3 very minor conditions in the staff's report. And staff and the Planning Commission also recommend that Council approve the special use review request for an RV park on Lot 2 with the adoption of Ordinance 28 of Series 2019. Now, that would conclude the staff report. As always, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. We also have the applicant, Mont Rosenberg, here to speak on behalf of this project as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of council for Patrick? Ms. Cochran.
Is this being rezoned to sell or for you guys to build?
It's not being rezoned. There is no rezoning that's been proposed.
Would you like to have the applicants address us?
Yes.
Ms. Cochran,
I would like
you
to
mind
hear,
coming
yeah,
to the microphone, the podium,
what your plans are.
and address? I know it's been a long time coming, but here we are. Could we have your name, please?
Excuse me?
And your name, please?
Rosenberg, Mont Rosenberg.
Bon.
My wife, Deborah Spear, and
Okay.
a business partner.
Okay. Ms. Cochran has a question for you.
Are you guys planning on developing this yourselves or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
In conjunction with our family, our kids.
Okay.
Okay.
In fact, for you who haven't read the entire application, Lot 3 is going to be a nonprofit charitable.
A what? I'm sorry?
Nonprofit charitable operation.
Okay. Mr. Meisner? Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Meisner, go ahead.
This is directed at everybody. If we put the watchman's quarters there, we then need water and sewer. Is that not correct?
Excuse me, my hearing is not the best in the world. Go ahead and
Kind
yell
of
at me.
directing here.
Oh, you're Patrick.
Well, yes, the watchman's quarters would be one of the 12 spaces proposed for the RV park. All 12 spaces are proposed to have utility connections.
And I'll ask this question to the gentleman, for myself and for another council member. I know I can't probably do that, but I will. The greenhouse that you're building on there, specifically, what is your intention with that greenhouse?
The greenhouses are going to be used for hydroponics.
What kind of hydroponics?
That's the utilization of water and fish in conjunction with growing tomatoes or lettuce, things like that. It's mostly an experimental project for us and our family to see if we can, develop without the use of maximum water. It's just something that Colorado needs a lot of, especially down in this area. And I've already been it's got nothing to do with marijuana.
But that zoning with a greenhouse would allow you to grow hemp, is that correct?
No.
Hemp licensing is a whole separate process. They would have to go through and get licensed not only by the state, but they'd have to come through and get certification through the city as well. They have not proposed any of that as part of this application, and obviously, after the fact, if we discovered it, we would have to make them go through that process for approval, or in the meantime, cease and desist growing hemp.
Do we not have hemp operation growing now?
Yes. There is one across from City Hall.
Right.
And that did have to go through a certification process.
With the state, but what about the city?
I believe that they had to go through, I know my predecessor was involved in that, and I believe she did have to go through and do some certifications with them.
Yeah, if you have a question about that, we would more than
Well, I'm just trying to clarify with the fact that in that zoning, it is possible with an existing greenhouse to grow hemp. Is that not
You're
correct?
saying industrial hemp, not marijuana?
You're right.
Correct.
Yes.
Well, yeah, if you refer to hemp.
Yeah.
You could in fact do that, is that not correct?
In C general commercial, yes.
With some process.
You could grow most anything in a greenhouse, but my understanding of hemp, it requires hundreds of acres to be profitable.
Well, there's not hundreds of acres right across the street.
Well, we don't have it here, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody being able to grow hemp profitably without a very large process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Meisner. Mr. Hamrick?
So Patrick, I have a question. What is the difference in zoning between a RV park and a trailer park? Is there some difference, or is that, do we have a definitional difference of those two activities?
Well, I guess I'd need clarification as to what you mean by trailer. An RV park assumes that the people who will be staying there are sort of short-term residents who have booked ahead to reserve a space to park for a few nights, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. A trailer park, I would understand, is something where maybe you locate a mobile home, put skirting on it. The only place in Canyon City where mobile homes are permissible is in an MH1 mobile home park or MH2 mobile home subdivision district.
So if we approve the conditional use permit for the RV park, none of those will be year-round RVs, is that correct?
My understanding is no, they will not be year-round RVs.
We're requesting daily, weekly, and season-long. We're trying to run it as a destination resort.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Concerning the RV park, is it right if I ask you a question? What is it a upscale RV park, or what? I mean, there's a difference between just a regular, just open up ground, or making it a little bit more upscale for higher quality clients.
Oh, much more upscale than what's been done in this local area. And if you can notice on our pictures over there, where the 12 units are, the sites are, we've got over a half an acre in front of us between ourselves and the street, which will be green space, of which it'll be all planted and landscaped, and basically, to be very honest, to hide the tenant across the street from my tenants.
What kind of clients are you going to be marketing to?
Specifically to equine. Persons who want to come here as a destination, like if you were to live in Rifle, Colorado, In the wintertime, you don't have horses to ride in that area. It's just, 6 feet deep in the snow. But they can come down here in the middle of their winter and go riding.
What is your motivation for having a hotel or a motel at that location?
Well, the hotel motel is not nearly as spectacular as that. It's going to be possibly 15 units maximum. And it's going to be run more or less like a bed and breakfast operation, except no off-street parking.
Okay, I do have a couple more questions. Why are you wanting to do greenhouses and crops?
What's that?
Why are you wanting to do greenhouses and crops?
The greenhouses?
Yeah, what is your motivation for that?
A family of scientists, masters, PhDs, engineering, agronomics. We're looking, like I said earlier, at trying to facilitate the use in agriculture here that doesn't utilize water or utilizes the minimum amount of water, because it's all recycled into the project. You go to the tomatoes set in the water, the fish fertilize the water, they care for it, it goes back and around and around and around. So the utilization is minor compared to what the operations for agriculture are here now. And everyone, I'm sure, is aware of what's going on in the state as far as everybody yelling and screaming from a city standpoint for water. I mean, we're blessed with a stream going between us, and the people in Colorado Springs wish like hell they had a river.
Can I jump in just a sec? My oldest son, Ramsey Kropp, is the inventor of a water purification process. And the company's called Aquamost, but he really wants to be able to experiment with it on greenhouses. So it's not going to be like a huge greenhouse operation. It's just going to be more of a hobbyist, just seeing how we can make this work.
Okay.
We're looking at what I think is what we applied for is 50-foot by 125-foot greenhouse.
Okay. Patrick, this might be part of a question for you. They talked about having in Lot 3 a supported turf for their parking lot. What are the standards for a supported turf parking lot?
So this would be a grasscrete type of installation, and it's intended to be more of a pervious surface as opposed to poured concrete or tarmac. We have discussed it as a means for them to reduce the actual amount of stormwater runoff that they would be creating with the development.
And speaking of that, are we requiring them to have that expanded detention basin for stormwater? Or is that?
No, I thought there was a stormwater report that said no.
Or was that more just self-desired?
Right,
Yeah.
so this application started out as a PDD, was one of the initial concept, PUD, sorry, as a PUD. And so they were going to develop it as a whole, and then we found a better tool for them to use for the development, which is how they ended up with minor sub. So there's a little bit of overlap in some of the review that we've done and some of the considerations that we have on the project that you wouldn't typically see in a minor sub. But because they're building this all as one big project and they don't intend to sell it, there's some of those things that are in here, like a drainage plan, which you typically wouldn't see in a minor sub, but because of the type of processes they're using and the type of zoning that it is and the type of use that they'll have, that they do have to have some sort of BMP on site. For each individual lot as a minor sub, as a PUD, it would have been all as one. Since they're keeping it together as one owner, they're utilizing the entire site, all 3 lots, to treat their runoff. So they have a treatment train with a series of grass swells, grass buffers, and then an extended detention is what they plan to use.
And do you find that reasonable as a private property owner?
Excuse me?
Do you find that reasonable as a private property owner?
I don't think a private property owner is a question. It's a commercial piece of property. We knew it when we bought it. We bought it specifically because it was commercial property, and we could do with it what we were trying to accomplish. Thank you, planners and engineering, this kind of thing. It takes us a year and a half to get to this point. but we've been able to mold the project and make it work within your Code 17, Code 16, which I attest to the fact that it needs to be changed.
Yeah, a year and a half, I should say, so, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I do have a couple more questions. For the Lot 3, you said that it needs to have a nonprofit charitable organization. Is that you and your family, or are you looking for somebody to be that nonprofit charitable organization?
No, we are it.
You are it?
We are it.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been involved in the equine business for a long time. My wife has a medical background of sorts, veterinarian, equestrian, and we have been working for quite a few years with hippotherapy, which is horse therapy, this kind of thing. It is very, very helpful. In fact, we were involved with the first function that was acceptable for insurances in the United States that was done in our hometown, up in Montana. And we're pretty proud. We've been doing it for, excuse me, it's just my heart, I love it. We've been doing it as a charity situation. And I'm thinking of all the kids and the adults and everybody who have gone through this, not just our situation, but others that are in this business. But we're not in the business of doing it. We're in the business, excuse me, of using our RV park and our equestrian center and our bed and breakfast aspects of a hotel motel to generate the funds to make it a foundation, a charitable foundation, so that those people in this community that can use that will be able to afford to.
All right, so that answered, and thank you for your heart that you have for helping those who can benefit from this incredible therapy. I guess my question before was going to be, what comes first, the equine nonprofit or the housing? And it sounds like the RV park and the bed and breakfast will help raise the funds to run your charity. Is that right?
Well, in this particular sense, the RV park is probably the most sensible way to generate the first monies, which will go back into putting the equine facility together, which will accommodate people from who knows where, Austin, Texas, coming up here for a 2-week vacation and want to bring their horses. We can accommodate whether they bring their RV, their horse trailer that has living quarters. We can put them over in our bed and breakfast type of operation. We can house their horses. We can give them all of the information and all of the worth we can. The city already has established some phenomenal equestrian areas.
Are you going to be using a lot of the trails that have been built in the area?
Absolutely. Over at the ecology park, those areas over there, phenomenal riding.
Would your nonprofit also be willing to help with the maintenance on those trails?
Excuse me?
Would your nonprofit be willing to help with the maintenance of those trails? Because that will cause some damage to the trails, and it's nice when our users are participants.
If you're going to use them, you need to pay
shape.
for them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Except in our case with the kids and adults that need the hippotherapy, we're going to try to pay for it themselves, for us to pay for it.
Okay. Any other questions, council?
I just have one quick one.
One quick question, Mr. Meisner.
Well, I think maybe Mr. Hamrick or somebody asked about the fact that we were talking about seasonal, and I thought you said yes, but as I hear you talk more, it sounds like it wouldn't necessarily be seasonal in terms of that RV park. Or did I misunderstand? I mean, the use of that RV, the use of the RV park, is that year-round or seasonal? And
Well,
what does
it's
seasonal mean?
We've described it as being daily, which are basically weekends, and 2 weeks, or seasonal. I mean, somebody might want to come in here for the entire winter season, bring their horses.
But year-round use?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's
Okay.
the reason we've got to have city utilities to make it work properly.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to ask for a motion and a second. I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second on the ordinance.
Now, is that attachment B?
That takes care of both. Go ahead. Would you tell us?
In the council memo on the front of this item, the second page, there are 2 suggested motions. And those are what we are recommending that you make your motions and base a second on.
both of them or pick one?
Both of them,
Okay.
because they are for two different but related land use requests.
So so your motion, we do the first motion and get approval on it, and then come back and do the second motion and get whatever you're going to do.
Correct.
All right? So make the first motion as in your packet.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Smith? Ms. Smith?
I move that the City Council approve the Red Hawk Landing minor development subdivision subject to the 3 conditions specified on page 6 of the staff report.
Second?
Second, Ms. Cochran, thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Meisner?
Those 3 conditions is the fire department, right?
I believe the 3 conditions pertain to some red line corrections on the plat exhibit that I had requested. They are also, there were some red line requests, red line revisions that were specified by the city engineer, and there were some conditions precedent to the future site plans for lots 1 and 2 and 3.
Okay, we're discussing the motion.
I just want to express my distaste for these staff recommendations. And don't take that wrong, but it seems like inevitably we wind up having problems with those recommendations that are down the line somewhere. I don't know how we get over that.
Well, these are the 3 we're going to approve, period, right? Those are the only 3 that we will be approving.
Yeah, but we're not really approving them.
You do with those the recommendations.
They're not part of the ordinance.
No.
The ordinance approves the special use, not the minor sub, and you're on the motion for the minor sub right now,
Right,
not
right.
not the ordinance. Sorry.
We'll
Okay.
have this discussion next.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we have a motion and a second, and we've had a discussion. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Thank you. Let's go on to the second motion regarding the special use permit, as I understand it. Would someone like to take a stab at that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hamrick?
I believe it's 28, is that
It
correct?
is number 28, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor and council, I move to approve ordinance number 28, series of 2019, by title on first reading, and set the second reading for November 18th, 2019.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Meisner?
Well, we're back to the recommendations. I see the recommendations in the staff report, but I guess I don't understand legally why those motions aren't in that ordinance.
Because the ordinance only deals with the special use.
The conditions attached to the minor subdivision.
The minor sub is not approved by ordinance. You've already had a motion, a second, and you voted on the minor sub with the 3 conditions.
When I asked you that before, you said that applied to the other one.
No, I didn't. I actually explained just it as I'm explaining it right now.
Any other questions?
Obviously not.
Well, this is a special use permit. Different, 2 different things. We're doing it all at one time, making it simpler, I think. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Did we second it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, second, thank you. Any more discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that will come back on for second reading on November the 18th, which is the next city council meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And please keep us informed on how it's going. Truly, if there's any, you think there's hiccups or something like that, we'd like to know about it. Does a horse get hiccups? Okay, well, what? Sure, we know, but just in
Well, good
case.
luck to you folks, okay?
Yeah, good luck. We'd like to see that happen.
Good luck.
All right?
Best wishes to
Thank
you.
Yes. All right. we're going to go to 14. Thank you, Patrick. Tried to get you out
Thank you,
sooner, but
Patrick.
that's the way it goes. All right, we're going to have a discussion on community agency. I'll invite the city administrator to, what?
14A, item G,
Oh, I was going to do that.
that's next.
I was going to do that 17G after we do all the other stuff. Do you want to do it in 14A? Let's talk about community funding. We'll have a city administrator do the staff report regarding community funding, agency funding.
All right, Mr. Mayor and members of council, pardon me. On October 18th, the Community Agency Funding Committee with Councilman Meisner, Councilman Hamrick, and Tammy Nordyke, our finance director, sat down and interviewed 16 of the 17 applicants that turned in requests for funding for 2020. The committee also discussed how to handle a late submittal from Fremont Adventure Recreation. The committee felt that it would be best to, in the best interest of the council, to decide funding for that group here at this council meeting. So no interview was conducted for FAR. We have a proposed budget earmark of $50,000 in community agency funding. The committee recommended funding without FAR is $45,126.60. The recommended, if you were to include FAR, without FAR would be $42,626.60.
Don't get dyslexic on us here.
I know.
Okay. Anything more, Mr. Stevens? That it? All right. Any discussions or any questions of our administrator, acting administrator this time?
I can just kind of help explain.
Oh, Mr. Meisner, I'm sorry, I forgot, I didn't look up. Go ahead. This is your turn to talk. Go right ahead.
So having worked with community funding for a number of years, when I first saw the list, I was concerned that FAR, which typically is always on the list, wasn't on the list. So I contacted a representative from FAR and said, what's going on? Where's your request? And that individual indicated to me that she had missed the deadline by her own actions. And because she had missed the deadline, she just said, okay, I missed the deadline, that's it. And I said, well, considering how council has felt over the years that I've interpreted about supporting, in particular, the trail brochure that they make, I said I would suggest that you turn in an application and we can review it and let council decide whether they want to consider or not consider funding that particular. So I think that's the first thing. I mean, if council doesn't want to fund it, I'm not offended, she's not offended, and we just go on from there.
Okay. Ms. Turner.
I was looking at, we approved most funding requests in full or proposed to. And I wondered why we didn't want to fund the vaccine voucher that JJ's Helping Paws had proposed. It seems like we still had some funds left over in what we had allotted for community funding. I wasn't sure if there's a particular reason why we didn't want to fund their request in full.
I think as you go through that whole funding allocation thing, you look at each one of those projects that an agency has, and in terms of what you see of value to the community relative to the amount of dollars you have. And then I think the committee felt like this year as well as last year that the spay and neuter would have some impact on the community, and the trap and release did, but the vaccine voucher had less of an impact or effect on the community. I mean, that's all I could say, but John can express his.
Go ahead.
And I would just add on to that everything that you said is what my feelings were, but in addition, in terms of the total funding, we felt it best to reserve some small portion. We've seen in the past needy and worthy projects come before us, and so we wanted to retain a little bit of funding. We felt this was a place to do it.
Okay. Then I just, on the late application for FAR, I'm in support of giving them those funds, even though their application was late. You know, in my new role, I'm recruiting young attorneys to come and work in our community and live here, and encouraging them to live in our community rather than commute from the Springs. And that trail guide is a really cool thing to be able to hand them and say, come live here. Don't just work here. Come down here and enjoy everything we have, and here's where you can get started. So I think it's a really great asset for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Appreciate that. Ms. Smith?
I also support the funding for FAR. They have an excellent reputation and consistency that we funded them every year. For that, I think we get our money back for that investment with FAR. I do have a couple questions. On Fremont Starfire Cadet Squadron, in parentheses, it said 2018 only, and I wasn't sure what that meant.
I think their last request for funds was
in 2018?
2018.
Okay. And I also wanted to thank you for funding the Gold Belt Tour for picking up trash cleanup. They're a really big part of our illegal dumping task force, and thank you for that. Those funds will definitely be put to good use. And another question I have is for the Laundry of Love. Did they make any indications that their facilities are, from what I understand, they're incredibly booked every time that they're open? It's almost overwhelming how many people they have come getting their services. When our officers have talked to some of our homeless population at Veterans Park, they ask, why are you here? What can we do to maybe provide different services to help you with certain behaviors at the park? And they said one of the biggest ones was being able to do laundry. That's one of the biggest needs, and I just wondered if 2,000 would be enough, if they could benefit from more funding.
Well, I think, I need John and Tammy, but if I recall, the funding that we gave them last year lasted 3.5 or 4 months. It didn't last very long, and yes, they're going through a tremendous amount of money, and they're supplementing that with some other income. And yes, they could use more funds, but I don't remember the numbers, but a substantial amount of that $45,000 goes towards homeless-related issues. And you know, that's just part of the package. But yeah, they could use more money, but.
How much did we give them last year? Do you remember?
Do what?
How much did we give them last year?
I think it was the same.
It was the same. Tammy, did you have something?
Well, yeah, it's right. I ain't got
Yes.
that sheet.
They also had mentioned that they cannot do more loads. There's a certain
Yeah.
restriction when you're there.
You're right.
And so it doesn't matter if they have more funding or not. They can only do so much laundry in the time they're allotted. And they are going to, if I remember correctly, they did say that they're going to limit the number of washers somebody can have, so you don't have people coming in and basically taking the whole facility over. They're not having that many, but, you know, somebody coming in and taking 10 machines. So they're trying to limit the number of machines somebody can have, which should help with some of those other
That's right.
issues.
I forgot about that.
I believe we did have that discussion, that they were pretty maxed out on what they did, because that was, I know it was my personal thought that this is such a great community service, it'd be nice if we could throw some more money their way, but this is.
Okay. And I'm just wondering if once a month isn't enough, if it needs to be more, but I guess it's only as far as you can go with the volunteer work that you have.
Well, I think it's more controlled by the use of the facility.
I think so. It's use of the facility.
Because the facility has to block out.
Yeah, but I think they say that's also the best proceeds they get that day sometimes, but anyways, I was just curious about that. So I'm really grateful. I know it's an all-day commitment, and thank you for the time and consideration you put into it, and really appreciate and value your recommendations.
Okay, Mr. Hamrick, did you have anything more to add?
No, that was what I wanted to.
Okay, we're going to take you off there. Mr. Meisner, are you done? You're done. No, go ahead, go ahead. Just go ahead.
Okay, so we need the, obviously, the decision about FAR, but then the other decision is, there have been numerous times that I've specifically asked previous administrators if the monies that we're giving to those organizations was on a reimbursement basis, and I was ensured that that's the case. But I profoundly believe at this point that that is not the case, that we are giving those funds to those organizations prior to them giving us receipts, and I don't even know if they're submitting receipts. And as I understood the intent of the program is that there would not be any funding to an organization, with the exception of the laundry people, without receipts. And I don't think that's happening, and I'm not blaming current administration. But that came to light, and when you talk to people, and I didn't want to offend any of those people, it became obvious that they weren't submitting receipts, and we're still getting their funding.
Mr. Hammer?
And if I could just add on to that, and there's actually a very good and sufficient reason why the Laundry of Love cannot provide receipts, because those are coin-operated machines, and how do you cash control coins, kind of really tough.
But I
And
know-
So that the receipt requirement should not apply to Laundry of Love.
Because when we did it last year, there's requests, and same with this year, for specific things, like Fremont Search and Rescue is requesting GPS receivers, specific items, and we're approving those based off their specific needs. And so if there's no receipts coming in, we have no accountability for where that money is actually being spent.
And I think with our current staff, they're not understanding what the mandate originally was. And as I'm understanding it, 2 or 3 years ago, when this new program was built, it was built on the foundation that we're going to have reimbursements. We are not going to be giving people money first.
Well, and furthermore, I think they have to, at the end of the year, we need to know, when we give funding next time, if they turned in their receipts and if everything matched up and all that. Because if they can't do that, then they should not be eligible for funding in the next year.
That's
Okay.
what I thought.
Should we request Tammy and?
Well, yeah, I would concur.
I think it's just a clarification that.
Yeah, I would concur with all of that. It should be on a reimbursement basis.
Okay, maybe we'll keep track of that in
Yeah.
the future. All right. Madam, did you want to add something, or? Yeah, you have to come up here and we'll have your name.
And while she's coming up, the Gold Belt thing was a challenge for us in terms of those organizations that aren't based within the city limits. But considering the impact of the Gold Belt tour and relative to generating potential revenues, that's why that particular organization was chosen, because we felt like that there was some degree of financial advantage there versus some of the others.
Okay. Yes, now, can we have your name and
It's Hillary Lehman.
Lehman?
Yes.
Hillary, okay, Hillary, go ahead.
I just had some questions to clarify what you're talking about with receipts as it relates to FAR. Have you not gotten receipts from them for previous grants or whatever this is that you're giving them money for?
I'm making a generic statement that the program was intended to only provide funds to organizations upon the providing of paid receipts.
And I have firsthand knowledge of FAR. I do know that we paid them on a reimbursement basis.
So you have receipts to prove that?
So you guys
Okay.
are good.
So can I ask for some money even though I passed the deadline?
I don't know. That's
Well, I'll take care of that if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'll run this meeting here, so, okay. No, well, thank you. So, are we at the end of this question session?
Yeah, I would just like to say one other thing, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I don't
No.
mean to make us run long here, but I think it's important because the way that I approached these funding questions was to look for worthy projects, in other words, projects that benefited our population, projects that were force multipliers, that if we were spending the money, we couldn't get nearly the bang for the buck, and looking for those organizations that provided those types of services that are difficult for government to provide, and that economics Mr. Meisner mentioned the economics of the Gold Belt. That's a consideration, but I think the emphasis there is on the attractive environment, maintaining an attractive environment here within the city. I just wanted to make those points as how I approached the funding questions.
Okay, then I'm going to ask for a motion, and if it is your pleasure to include in that motion funding for FAR, please consider and do so. So I'm asking for a motion. Mr. Meisner.
Mayor and council, I move that we approve the recommendations from the Community Agency Funding Committee, including the donation to FAR.
Second.
Made and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion?
I would just add that that's $45,126.60.
60 cents.
That's the total expenditure. Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Any more discussion?
Just quickly,
Mr. Meisner? No, I'm turning.
the other thing with the agencies that we didn't fund is they could not tell us, they couldn't give us any data again this year in terms of the number of Canyon City residents that they're serving. So that was another factor in saying, you got to draw the line.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haggett, did you have a statement? Go
How
ahead.
much money, you didn't mention the amount of money for FAR.
Oh, it's on that sheet.
It's
$3,000.
$2,500.
$2,500 for the book.
Okay.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any more discussion? Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Haquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Let's have a short discussion, emphasizing short, on item 14A, which is discussion regarding G of the consent agenda. And please keep it concise, and let's move forward. Who would like to start that discussion with what you'd like? Ms. Turner.
Well, I think what we want to do is amend the lease agreement to add language to allow for permitting in those lots. So I think we're going to have to maybe set this over for another meeting to allow us time to draft that new language.
Okay. Would you, so would that be the consent of council? We just don't go to motion, we just agree we're going to send it over to clarification?
I don't have a problem with setting it over, but I think what we need to look at is whether we can draft it in the sense of permitted parking too. Give us some examples of what we can do with that parking space and all that. And 1 year, I think, in my opinion, should be the max.
Okay.
And then, like I say, you look at the deal with permitted parking.
So our direction then to the attorney is 1 year and codify.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a contrary view on that. I think that the term is appropriate, given that we have a 30-day written notice and the deal goes away. And so I think that if we have it until December 31st, 2022, that's appropriate. That's my opinion.
All right, do you still want to set this aside for further discussion, or do you want to make a motion on it?
I don't think we can unilaterally change the lease agreement and then vote on it, so.
Okay, got it. Well, we want to add a permitting process as well into some, no, they have not signed it.
We're not unilaterally changing it. They haven't signed it, sorry. But you can still set it over, just.
Do we need to get into specifics of permitting with our lease with them, or is that just something for us to decide?
Yeah, we have we have permitting already, so we could allow permitting there. It's just a matter of getting their approval within the lease agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. Catherine, do we need to push this to a later date for the rewording of the phrasing, or is that something that we could make an amendment on tonight?
I can propose language to make that amendment if you'd like right now and see if you like it. Would you like me to do that?
Are we going to do a second reading?
No.
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 It's pretty simple.
What's your word?
So in the let's see. Third sentence in paragraph 3 that starts with "the city." So the city shall have the sole right and authority to regulate and control the use of such parking lots for the general public, and require parking by permit only during the term of this lease, or require parking by permit only during the term of this lease. And then the rest of the sentence would stay the same.
All right, agree with that?
Sure.
Okay, here's the way I say, Mr. I'm wiping you off. You're done, Mr. Meisner. Thank you. You have the opportunity as the new council. A council has the opportunity not to fund that. If you don't like what occurred that year, don't fund it. Give 60-day notice, you're done.
30 days.
30-day notice. That's even better. That's my opinion. Mr. Meisner.
Mr. Mayor and council, I move that we accept the lease agreement, parking lot. How about if I say that everywhere? The parking lot, a lease agreement with the suggested change in paragraph 3 from the attorney regarding allowing permit parking and all other terms and conditions remaining the same.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Just that if we could get quarterly or whatever updates of whether or not it's being utilized and.
Sure. Absolutely, be happy to do that.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be telling as well. I appreciate you bringing that up, Ms. Cochran.
Yes.
To see whether that's appropriate, and we can give a 30-day notice and we're done. Okay.
Ryan, will you be talking to the downtown merchants
We will, yeah.
when it's final?
Yeah, we'll let the downtown merchants know.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran?
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Turner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay, number 15, number 13 on your schedule, and 15 on mine. This is an introduction and adoption by title only of Resolution 24, Series 2019, entitled, "A Resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, authorizing a transfer of budgeted funds within the 2019 budget of the City of Canyon City, Colorado." Mr. Administrator, would you give us a report, please?
We'll have Tammy give the report,
Oh,
please.
excuse me, you did come up there.
Okay,
Ms. Nordyke?
The resolution that you have in front of you requests that we transfer funds from, in the general fund for the total of $21,200. $14,705 will be from purchased services and from our supplies and materials to capital outlay for the new fill system software. This was a purchase that was approved by council earlier this year. While we are getting ready to do our year end, we are trying to reclassify the expenses to the proper codes that they need to be in. Initially, it was in an operating account. It needs to be capital, so we want to go ahead and do that because we do need to capitalize it. The next one basically was to cover the additional costs for a digital scanner, and that digital scanner is going to be capitalized because it is over our threshold of $5,000. And then our circulation desk for the library, it was purchased out of their supplies and materials line item, and because it is over the capitalization threshold, we want to move those funds to the capital item, so it is, it follows the correct accounting. The next one is we want to have $771,000 in the water fund appropriations reallocated. The first is to move $684,000 from our capital outlay to contracted services. This was for the tank recoating. Essentially, that is a operating expense and not a capital item. Then the last one is to move from our capital outlay to capital projects for additional water mains that were done. And so essentially this resolution is not changing the bottom line of the budget, it's just reallocating the funds to the proper categories.
Okay, Mr. Meisner?
To you whomever. The original $14,700 for the fuel system software,
Yes.
you mentioned that council had previously approved that?
Yes, that was earlier in the year. We did go out for bid on that. We only had, basically it came back as a sole source because it is a very specific software for our fuel system.
So at that time, was there mention the fact that we're going to transfer $14,000 from one fund to another fund?
It's all in the, it's still in general fund. At that time, we did not realize we did not have the detailed invoice to say what was contracted services and what was actually software. When we got that detailed invoice in, it said, this is for the software, this is for implementation. And so then we determined at that point, after it was already purchased, that it needed to be capital. So this is just making sure that we are cleaning up our financials to make sure that capital items are capitalized and non-capital items are expensed.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but transfers over 5,000 are supposed to have approval, pre-approval with council. Is that not right, or am I misunderstanding that?
I think if we were transferring funds and it was not budgeted, this is just a line cleanup. This is not, a new purchase or a lack of funds within the budgeted process.
Well, it's already in the budget and spent. All we're trying to do is categorize where it should go correctly. Some was material, some was their efforts to put that material, install that equipment. That's two different things. And that's what it would break down to. It's already in the budget, it's paid, you're just trying to make it correct.
Right, we are preparing for year end, so these were some of the ones that had come up that we needed to get before council.
And that's what all these are. They're a correction of where they were placed in the budget. They've already either been spent or were approved to be spent.
Thank you for that professional explanation.
I deal with budgets occasionally. Sorry. Okay. Any other questions? Then I'm going to ask for a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Cochran?
I move that we approve resolution number 24, series of 2019.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hess. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Nay.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Hi.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to number 16. Mine, number 16 here is probably number 14. Introduction and final read and first reading. It's first reading. So I'm going to open a public hearing, I suppose. Is that what I'm doing? No?
Just first reading.
First reading, okay. Introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance 26, series 2019, entitled, an ordinance of the City of Canyon City repealing and reenacting section 1.16.050 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning useful public service. Could we have a report from our acting administrator?
Yes, sir. Mayor and members of council, a couple months ago, we had a general government or vision meeting discussing useful public service and the fact that we currently do not allow for sentencing of useful public service. Pardon me. The attached ordinance would repeal and reenact to allow defendants convicted of misdemeanor or other petty offenses to complete useful public service in addition or in place of another other sentence that the court imposes.
Okay, any questions of our administrator? Okay, none. I would ask for a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I
ma'am.
move that we adopt ordinance 26, series of 2019 for useful public service.
Second.
Second, Ms. Cochran. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran.
Aye.
Councilmember Hamrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like, any other comments or anything for the good of the cause except for Mr. Meisner? Any other questions? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I think we got a lot done today.
We did. That was great. So we're adjourned. Thank you.